That's the first thing I noticed. How specific you were. The fact that you searched on 3 continents. It sounded very exhausting.
Yeah, I was very motivated to find my person. Like I really, probably also because it took me, like it just didn't happen for me, like I just, as I was dating, it was not working for so long. It just became even like more of a mission, right? Like more of a mission, more of a mission.
Something you had to start after.
Yeah, exactly. Because it wasn't working. Like it really wasn't working for me.
So what continent did you start with? Was it North America? Or are you born and raised?
Yeah, I was born and raised in North America and then went to Europe and then eventually was on the African continent.
Oh,
And actually a little bit on the Asian continent too. Oof, that's true. That's
like
4, isn't it? I lived in Istanbul for a little bit of time, which Istanbul, if you haven't been, is amazing. And it's split between the continents of
yeah.
Europe and Asia. So
But it's not considered in the Middle East either.
um I think sort of it's kind of, it's the Near East, maybe we would say.
Yeah.
Because it's the beginning, right? It's the beginning of the Asian continent. Obviously, it's running up against the European and the African continent. So, um, well, I guess it doesn't run into Turkey itself isn't necessarily running into the African continent, but that region, yeah.
Yeah, and I noticed that you speak your languages were German as well. Do you speak time in Germany or Austria?
I did. I first lived, so when I was, I guess, in high school, we can say I did an exchange and lived in Germany for a while,
Okay.
and then went back after high school, and then got a degree in it. So I started teaching German. Actually, that was my career for quite some time.
Oh, look at that.
Teaching English and German all over the world. So it's something that I kind of fell into. I'm definitely a big language person. I've actually studied 10 languages. So German is my sort of like most fluent second language. But I'm very big into sort of all the languages of the world, in a very nerdy way.
Oh, well, hallo, mein Name ist Bernardo.
Ah,
Jetzt ist dir?
sprechen Sie Deutsch? Sehr gut. Und dir?
Sehr gut, danke. So,
Hast
that's
du
it.
Deutsch
I'm done.
gelernt?
It's
Oh,
a little
okay.
bit. Yeah, I know a little bit. It's really hard trying to teach yourself and not live
Oh,
there. So that's the
yeah.
struggle that I kind of had. I had a partner in Austria for a couple of
Ah,
years. Like that, there was always that language there. But luckily, she was very good at English because obviously over
mm,
there they value language more. Like I guess in the States, most people take
yeah.
Spanish or French and just kind of lollygag with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, she spoke really good English.
Mhm.
It was never a problem, but I did try to learn a little bit on my own, and I still kind of try to learn a little bit here and there because Germany and Austria, or
Mhm.
German language is always fast. Very different.
Yeah, it's a hard language to learn, and especially as you said, if you're not, being immersed in it and
Yeah,
doing
you
it all
have to
day.
kind of live there, just be there.
Yeah, for sure. That's how I ended up on so many continents, trying to date because I wanted to learn their language.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
Okay, so
Yeah.
it's like I told one of our friends when I told him that I scheduled a dating coach. I was like,
Mm.
this is gonna be a fun episode. I don't got much experience to compare it to because I mean I barely started, but I could just tell it's gonna be a fun episode. I would imagine. So I have a lot of questions, and as also a single person in their 30s, it's like I know that was what you're talking about as far as like dating in your 30s and going on the apps, the Tinders and the Bumble and all of that, and the swipe culture. That's something I'm kind of interested in because my introduction to Tinder was actually from the documentary The Tinder Swindler. So that was my introduction to it. So it was just like a big cautionary tale, if anything.
Mhm.
So for Tinder, I see it as from what I get, it's swiping left or swiping right if you like a person or don't like a person.
Yeah. So swipe left if you don't like the person, swipe right if you do like the person.
Okay.
And Bumble works the same way too. So there's this methodology is kind of being adopted as like, yeah, dislike is send it away to the left, like is to send it to the right.
Oh, and then does the person know that you like them, or is it until they hit you with a like too, and then it's like, oh, bing, bing, it's a match?
So now these dating apps have created sort of paywalls where if you pay, you can see who likes you beforehand. But the traditional way, we can call it, or the free way often is you don't get to know who likes you until you've swiped on them. And then if you swipe right, saying that you like them and they've also swiped right, like you're in agreement that you find each other attractive, then they'll say it's a match and, connect you in a little chat room essentially. Um, yeah.
I saw a story. I don't know if it was more of a clickbait or a sensational kind of title, but it was like $1,000 plan on Tinder, something like that.
I would believe it. I don't usually recommend Tinder in my work.
Yeah, man.
So I haven't researched that, but I I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, it's a very yeah, at a corporate level, dating apps are becoming very interesting.
It's very lucrative, I guess, because you're dangling the possibility. I mean, you search on 3 continents for it. You're dangling the possibility of your true love, your soulmate, whatever it may be, in front of a person. And the older we get, we feel like we have to find a person. What's wrong with us? I haven't found the person that can put up with me. We start feeling the pressure. Sometimes in family, because my background is Mexican, Native American, and with my culture, I see it a lot. If you don't have kids by the time you're 25, it's like something's wrong with you.
Right. Yeah.
I can't even complain as a guy because the pressure is 10 times more when you're a woman in my culture. Because it's like if you're ambitious and you're working towards your career, or you're going to school or grad school, like what's wrong with you? Why aren't you having kids yet? Like I have a friend that she's always competing with her sister. Older sister is a housewife. She went down that path. Good for her. She's a housewife. She has kids, and she's doing like a postgraduate school, like in a PhD. And her mom just tells her like, "Yeah, that's fun and everything, but your sister has kids already. Like, why don't you have kids yet?" Now?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to put accomplishments on a scale, but getting a PhD, it's kind of a big deal too. Obviously,
Yeah.
having kids is amazing. Raising kids, having a married life, it's awesome. But getting a PhD, you're not slacking away and wasting your life, I would imagine.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And I think a lot of that, what you're talking about, stems from this kind of an outdated fear, we can say, that like women are going to miss their fertility window. And the truth is, like, living in America, okay, our birth rates are not the most amazing in the world, but we do have the medicine. Like, we do have the capability for women to be giving birth to babies like much later, right? Like your 40s, right? So we're not talking like your 20s are the best time to have a baby anymore. It's like you could easily have healthy children in your 40s. So there's kind of this lag that I think is happening in terms of like there are these values of like start family as soon as you can. Like it's just, you're 18, like leave your house, get married, like go start a family. Um and yeah, there's kind of this like, oh yeah, like everyone has a different life path or, has different values that they're bringing to the forefront. And having a PhD is probably just as good as having a baby.
Yeah, I mean,
But
yeah.
so it brings you personal fulfillment, honestly.
Yeah.
And having, like waiting till later doesn't negate the fact that you could also become a parent later in your life. Um, so yeah, we're at kind of an interesting crossroads where there's a little catching up maybe to
Yeah.
do in terms of
Yeah, because I'm also barely learning. I have someone scheduled for the day on the topic of egg freezing, and I think that's hitting what you're talking about as far as it being prolonged, the time which you can have a kid.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So, what is your way? I think it's more the pressures that we succumb to in ourselves, society, that. And
Yeah.
okay, I'm rambling here. I want to get into you. Sorry.
Okay.
So before
I like this rambling. It's
yeah,
good.
when we started recording, you were just like, let's go ahead and start recording as far as so on. But we were talking about there, like you, the way you were searching for love. Was it developed from like the growing up watching princess on Disney kind of fable mythology, or what was it that, or you needed a person? Was it just companionship in general, or were you under the princess of it all?
I think probably a little bit of both, we could say. I was raised in a way that I was not allowed to watch TV, and I definitely was prohibited from watching Disney princess movies, for example, because my mother, her version of feminism was that I should not take on any of that, right? It was like,
Okay.
for her, it was like I should not need a man. I should not, identify at all with being a princess. So, I had, exposure to fairy tales for sure. So there was still some of that. And of course, romantic comedies, right? Like as I reached adolescence, like no longer just doing what my mom wanted. um,
Of course.
romantic comedies were like a big part of growing up, right? And in the early 2000s, as you probably know, like they were they were the big thing.
Yeah, I think we're in the same ballpark as
We are.
far as stuff that we saw growing up.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, that is not quite a fairy tale necessarily, but it does perpetrate a little bit of the same story in terms of like, oh, you're a woman just living your life, and then if you're a straight woman, right? You're a straight woman living your life, and then some man comes into your life through some mayhem, and then
Mm.
because he wants you so much, you overcome all the odds and you guys get together. Like that's like what love is. um and I was also in a really small school, right? Like I had a nice weird upbringing, so that also helped me.
So it was like a small town kind of vibe. Like,
It was in a big city, but it was a private art school essentially.
okay.
So I went to school with essentially the same males, like the same guys from the time I was 6 years old. So 6 to 12, I was with the same kind of essentially all of them, the same men.
Yeah.
Um, and, uh, that didn't lead to a lot of, like, dating options or whatever, but at the same time, like, I just wasn't a person who was kind of considered very attractive, I guess, or that was my perception of myself. And so, like, you know, at that time when it's like teenagehood and everybody's getting a boyfriend and getting a first kiss, like that was not happening for me, right? Like, um, I was not experiencing that. Like, I wasn't getting that. What I perceived was like normal teenagehood in terms of like you have your first boyfriend or you have your first like little crush that is whatever. Um, I did not get to have that. So, then I went abroad, as I was saying, and just kind of hoped that, like, being out in the world would, like, change it for me. Like, I'd finally somewhere in the world find someone who found me attractive. Um, but I brought a lot of that rom-com essence to it, like, I really wanted to find someone who just thought I was so attractive that, like, they would go to the end of the world for me, right? Like, it would just be so obvious that we were meant to be, that, like, we couldn't not be together,
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
that makes sense. Yeah, and that story just, it perpetrated my life, and when, I had so many iterations of it because it did not work out that way. I did not find this man who just wanted to be with me unconditionally, and, and that I mean, that continued into my late 20s too. So, my journey to becoming a dating coach was very much fueled by an attempt to kind of overcome uh, that pattern that I had, I guess, of just attracting casual relationships or not not attracting positive attention, feeling often very bad about myself and um, what was possible for me, like, oh, the men I like are never interested in me, or starting to date someone turns out they're not emotionally available, like just over and over these kinds of things that were just very disempowering. Like they just felt really kind of like at worst heartbreaking, right? Like getting some major heart smash in in and then sort of on a lighter note was just kind of like disappointing, just over and over, like disappointment. Um so, yeah, it was, I would say, it was fueled by a lot of things. It was fueled by many things. But definitely the things I learned in childhood did not set me up for great success.
If anything, it had the effect of wanting you what you kind of essentially were forbidden from experiencing as far as like princess fantasy in a way. It made you be more romantic, I guess.
That's very possible. Yeah.
But it's
Yeah.
interesting because I saw one of your YouTube videos and you were saying how you want to avoid changing yourself for your prospect for your partner. You know,
Yeah.
it's one thing to change things, change each other, improve each other, rather than just
Mhm.
change sound so negative, like improve each other, maybe. But
Yeah.
you don't want to, especially during the courting process, if you would.
Yeah.
You don't want to be
Totally.
like, oh, changing myself. It's like you're trying to make yourself amendable to them, and that's kind of what tearing your explanation. Like that was kind of the process you were going through when you were trying to get a partner. You were changing
Yeah.
yourself, molding yourself. Okay, like I have a friend that he met this girl. My friend used to smoke, call it whatever you're at, trees, marijuana,
Mhm.
and he stopped. But the person that he met, apparently, she still smoked. And then she's like, "But I can change. I can leave it." And he's like, "Well, I don't want you to change if you don't want to change. It's
Yeah.
not even dating yet. We're just
Yeah.
30, 40."
Yeah, I had the experience with my husband because he was a smoker when we
Mhm.
met. And he quit a month into meeting me, but I didn't actually tell him, right? I didn't ever say to him, like, I need you to quit smoking, or like, I wish you weren't a smoker, or like any of that. We actually
Really?
never talked. We never talked about it. We never talked about it.
But did you just leave the room when you started smoking, or did you? I mean, if you grew up like me, it was crazy growing up. I don't know how it was where you were at, but they were always smoking sections,
Yes,
right? Growing up.
definitely. Yeah.
So did
Yeah.
that make you be more like, deal? I'll just deal with it.
No, he would, like, do it outside, right? Like, he would literally go, like, just gone.
You know,
So,
smoke break. Yeah.
like, he wasn't a pack a day kind of a person. It was like he would smoke a cigarette, like,
Yeah.
I think it was a vape, in fact. But he gave it up from his own volition, right? Like, because he wanted to be a healthier person, you know what I mean? Like, and so that's what your story kind of reminds me of. It's like from his internal sense, he wanted to improve himself for the relationship in a way, right? But it wasn't because I was like, you need to change or we can't be together.
Yeah. Yeah.
I feel like, you want to be who they want you to be in a way. Like you want to be like a great choice for them and you want them to like you. Um, but the only danger is if you do start to like, change the little things about you or to change the bigger things about you, um, to please them, right? It's people pleasing behavior is what it really is, rather than, being like, "I wanna be this kind of person, and so that's why I'm doing this." Uh, that we get into these little playing games, like, "Oh, well, she would probably like me more if I did this, and so I'm gonna do that." Or, um, I was a big schedule rearranger, like, I need to, like, rearrange my schedule or make sure I'm in the right city on this day so that we can meet up, that kind of, like, life rearranging to
Then a
Right,
couple. Yeah.
totally.
Yeah. Because once you're a
Yeah,
couple, yeah, you make arrangements. Or you
yeah.
couple. It's kind of like, yeah, I see what you mean. And I think it was the recent YouTube video you posted as far as dating guys at the same time.
Oh, yes.
That was definitely an eye grabber. And if I actually had an interesting conversation with a friend recently. But if I hadn't had that conversation and seen that YouTube
Mhm.
video, I would have kind of been like, wait, what is that? But
Yeah.
she explained to me that she's dating 3 guys at the time.
Mhm.
Naturally, I was kind of like, wait, what? You're dating 3 guys? Like, do they know that you're? She's like, yeah, they know. I mean, and the way she explained it, I was like, oh, okay. So basically, 3 guys are trying to court you, but no one
Yeah.
has the exclusivity, and that's
Yeah.
when I understood it. So
Yeah.
that's kind of what you're referring to? At the same time, like 5 guys are
That's exactly it.
trying out,
Yeah.
for the position of full time boyfriend or whatever. And that's a process. Because I mean,
Yeah.
in elementary school, it was always what the little notepad. Do you like me? I like you. Do you like me? Yes or no? My girlfriend, yes or no? But somewhere after high school, it becomes so complicated. Because even with dating, it's like even if you go on a date, there's like what, a 3 date rule? Everybody has their own rules. Like after three
Yeah.
dates, you're a couple because obviously the person can tolerate you, go through 3 times, so obviously they're interested in you, so you're essentially a couple now, but no one ever says it. Like,
Mhm.
why do we avoid saying, hey, boyfriend, girlfriend? Like, you have to read the vibe. Like, is that something that you kind of clarify or add clarity to as far as like, why do we avoid straight up saying it? Is it more romantic to imply it? Or what is that?
Well, I think it's gotten so complicated, and especially again, like, with the way dating is changing, like, online dating just, it changes everything because suddenly you're dating strangers. Like, you're not dating the friend of a friend, you're not dating, like, someone you met at a party that
You
your
go
friend
around town.
hosted or Yeah,
Their dad knows your dad. Yeah.
exactly, like, they're not driving to pick you up because, that you saw them at whatever gathering. Um, it's, it it takes more time, I guess, because you have to establish, like, very basic trust in someone just to know that they're, like, a safe person, not even necessarily to know,
You gotta read the
like,
vibes.
everything about them.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You
for
gotta vibe.
sure. You like, really intensely because people and p our lives are complicated, right? It's like, they might be getting over their ex still, they might, have some really deep-rooted issues that they're just not mentioning yet. Um, they might, uh, have stuff going on in their personal lives that are just not really appropriate to share in like in a first date, but would really affect your life if you were seriously seeing this person, right? Like having kids, for example, right? Like already having children, or just some part of their background, right? Just being something that affects you in your life if you're their partner. So in general, when you're dating strangers, like, you have to kind of go more slowly or more honestly, is kind of what your comment was pointing to, like, really spelling it out, like, really talking about what's going on here, you know? And I think a lot of people, don't have the skills, honestly, like, a lot of people don't have the communication skills to be that honest, like, that's super vulnerable, like, it's kinda hard to do, it's like to say, like, "Here's all the hard stuff about me. Do you still love me? Like,
Yeah, and
am I still
it's
attractive?"
also hard to put yourself out there to be the one that caught feelings.
Yeah,
But
totally.
countless number of times we see, whether culture, people that we know, or just from seeing social media, we see the hookup culture when a person's not caught feelings.
Yeah, yeah,
They go into it with this hookup culture, attached or friends with benefits, but to catch feelings, and it's hard to admit that. So
yeah,
there's a lot of background stuff that happens.
exactly. Yeah, and maybe you even feel like, "Ooh, I wasn't supposed to catch these
Yeah,
feelings," or
yeah.
something, like, "Oh, my bad, like, now I'm ruining it." There's just so many layers to modern dating,
Of course.
Yeah.
So when you take on a client, because I never hired a dating coach, and I'm trying to think of Hitch. That's all I can think about is Hitch. That's the only reference
Yes,
point. Hitch. To me.
perfect.
I think with Hitch, unless I'm mistaken, was he helping Will Smith? Was he helping the other guy court a certain girl, or was it just in general helping improve his game?
I think he was helping him catch a certain girl. And the lessons were sort of like how to improve your game overall, right? But I think they were plotting. It's been a long time since I've seen that movie, but I think they specifically were like plotting how to get the girl.
Yeah, so that's more theatrical. That's something that you
Yeah, yeah. Uh, yeah, I mean the style I teach is not about like catching someone.
Yeah, because catching seems like deceptive, right? Like
Yeah,
you're tricking them.
yeah, and there is a certain amount of gamifying you can do to courtship, right? Because there are just certain behaviors that are attractive and unattractive. So like yes, there are ways that you can adjust how you behave in dating that kind of up your chances of being more attractive to that person. Um but definitely some of the techniques people are teaching are like hurtful. For one, I don't teach any of that. Like I don't teach any like hurtful manipulation. Like I'm not interested in those games. I don't condone that. Um, like the way that I teach dating is for people to get into healthy relationship. Like to be able to be in a long-term relationship with someone that they love, admire, respect. so so like all of the technique I teach is based on usually starting with the self, like how to admire and respect yourself more, and then applying that with other people, which usually leads to great outcomes. Like when you come from that place of dating, that usually leads to just a way healthier, more stable connection. Um, but it can be hard to do.
Yeah.
Hard to do at the beginning. So
So you don't ever start with a client. Have you ever done like a target? Like as far as the client comes in, because you say you only at the moment, or I think you specialize in women, right? You don't men. So does a girl ever come in or woman come in rather and say there's a guy at work that I like? There's a certain guy, a target, if you would. Is that something you also do as well?
not necessarily to be like, okay, we're gonna get you this man, but I'll definitely help with like communication, right? Because that's a big one. So it's sort of like how to actually communicate in a way that will attract this person rather than repel, or you know like what do you need to say in order to move this relationship where you want it to go. So for example, like, do you know if he's available? Right? It's like
Yeah,
we need
it's a
to
big one.
think about like this kind of stuff first of all, and and do that kind of like like uh, it is manipulation at some level, but it's also just like vetting, right? It's like we need to make sure he's available. We need to like test his interest in getting to know you. We need to like there are all these kind of like things to find out. Um and things you can do to kind of adjust yourself, right? Like you can work on your sort of presence, right? So like at work, do you really like show up and wash your hair, right? Like do you show up as your best self and bring a little bit of flirtation. I teach a lot of flirtation skills too, because that's a place that many people are blocked these days. And if you can bring a little flirtation, it's just so much easier to build attraction with people. So kind of like basic appearance stuff and then energy stuff in terms of like how do you show up, like to work in the case of having a crush on a coworker. Um and and then like what do you talk about with them, right? Like what kinds of topics do you bring up, or how much fun do you have, right? Like can you flirt with them already, or that kind of thing. um so it can be very tailored, like, it can be super tailored to the person's situation, but it's not we're not, like, setting up situations, like, again,
Yeah,
that whole thing where I was, like, planning my schedule around men and, like, trying to end up at their
exactly,
speed,
exactly.
not doing that.
That's
So
one thing that I noticed right now. You definitely practice you preach, and you definitely are obviously genuine to what you learn. Because hearing you explain it now, the point when you set up target culture, if you will, like trying to catch a certain guy, it's kind of detrimental because you're probably not going to get that person, that girl or that
yeah,
guy, and then it's like wasted time because you're basically changing yourself, like you said you were doing before, molding yourself for a prospect, a
yeah,
prospect. So it's better to work on yourself and doing these universal improvements, like you said, flirtations. That's universal. communication. That's universal. Self-improvement, self-love. That's all universal. So that if and when the right person comes, these things can work and it gets the
Yeah.
ball rolling. So that's
Yeah.
something I noticed, because if you talk about target culture, if you will, if it doesn't work, then you go to the next person. You keep changing yourself. You don't even know who you are anymore.
Yeah,
You keep
exactly.
changing yourself depending on who you're trying to attract.
Yeah. And eventually you're gonna be like, what am I doing?
Yeah, and then you can only as we say where I'm from, fake the funk. You can only fake the funk for so long. Eventually you're
So
gonna
true.
be for so long, and they're gonna be like, I didn't meet you like this. Like say for example, you're trying to date I had a friend that was trying to date a gym junkie, and he put on he put all the stuff, he bought all the gear, the workouts, everything, and they went on a couple dates, but then once they were together for a couple months, she ended up realizing he's a lazy guy. He doesn't work out. He's not into it. It was all superficial stuff, and then it's like obviously that didn't last long because
Right.
she was a gym rat, and
Yeah.
pretend gym rat. So it's like and it's countless examples because as guys I think girls get a bad rap as far as being chatty patty or all these things around or the Nancys, right? Gossip queens. Guys gossip just as much, if not more, than girls. As far as so like the countless examples I have with friends. One guy started going to Barnes and Noble because he wanted to seem like he was a book guy, but he wasn't a book guy, so that didn't last.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's these things that people do it. I don't know if you know How I Met Your Mother.
Yes.
Barney Stinson character, right?
Yeah.
The playbook. He has so many. Yeah. And I mean, obviously, that's it's not fiction because there are people that way. A vast majority of people act that way, but it is kind of obviously dramatized. It's comedy and it's TV, but
yeah,
that is something we see with dating culture, if you will.
yeah, for sure. I mean, that's like the pickup artist thing, right?
Oh yes, I was going to say that. I didn't want to cut you off, but pickup artists on YouTube. Yeah, go.
Yeah, no, that's all I was gonna say too. Was like that's what that is. It's like okay, like
Yeah,
yeah,
the YouTube universe, as far as that corner with the pickup artists, it's fun to watch, but it is kind of sad that people give their money to that and just make someone. It's insane.
yeah,
The taxes that we see.
yeah,
If anything, what I noticed, a lot of women hate has come from that. Obviously, to say there's women hate, that's nothing new. But I feel like it's been propelled with social media. You see it on Instagram, girls having fun, being silly, doing whatever at the gym, and guys are always commenting and trying to bring them down. Whatever, if they're just being silly, having fun, it's always guy hate, incoming guy hate, guy hate.
yeah,
You're not showing enough. You're showing too much. You're too curvy. You're not curvy enough. You're too tall. You're too short. It's always something they try to throw out there to bring a girl's confidence down a peg or two.
yeah.
Now, going back to the Barney character, that's something I remember him saying, that you have to bring a girl's confidence down to then build her up. But obviously, that's TV. That's meant to be funny. But when we see it in real life, it is quite detrimental to the psyche.
Yeah.
Women, obviously men too, but we're talking about women here. In that instance.
Yeah. Well, that reminds me of the conversation we had just before we went on camera, which is about, I, for example, I teach mainly straight women, but there are so many experiences that are in sort of dating strategies and techniques that are actually very universal. Like it doesn't really matter, who you're trying to attract or what your identity is, your persona. That kind of connection is like more similarities actually in terms of how to attract a great person than there are dissimilarities. But yeah, it's definitely true that there is this you know corner of dating that has that, and I would maybe say that the women version of this, like the straight women version of this, is kind of a lot of the what would we call that? It's sort of like dating to get a wealthy man.
Okay.
If you probably have not encountered that in your world, but I see these groups that are, it's like teaching kind of like sugar baby situations and just how to, you know, kind of like get a man for money instead of for deep connection and like love. Which, not to say that that's not possible in a sugar baby sugar daddy relationship, but like just to say that there are definitely like on both sides of the scale, like, you know, people out there teaching pickup artist stuff to men that it sort of, I mean, it definitely objectifies women, right? It's just like, that's just a woman to be conquered or whatever, and then do whatever you want later. And
Or the whole body count thing.
yeah, well,
That's ever since kids, I think similar in that as far as the age. Obviously, a guy, the higher the body count, high fives. A girl, the higher body count, you know, shame on you.
yeah.
Something like that.
And I still see videos about that. It's wild to me. Like, people are still making content about that. And I even had a comment on like a Facebook thing that I posted about, you know, because I did a lot of dating in order to like study this technique. And someone just decided that meant that I had slept with everyone, right? They were just like, wow, you know, I don't know, something about being a slut or I don't even remember, honestly, because I was like,
they're interchangeable.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But I was like, when did dating start meaning sleeping with? Sorry. Like, I don't know, dude. But you know, just this kind of idea that again is like some guy with no actual, you know, Facebook picture, just like
Yeah.
who even knows who this person is. Um, just yeah, like making that kind of comment on the internet. It's wild to me that like that is so persistent, like that kind of thinking. Um, and just like, I don't know, guys, like,
It's a weird corner of Instagram that I found too. At a friend, we used to always share these videos with each other, and we would just write comments, like popcorn comments. Go to the comment section because guys are going off. You know, and I hate to sound like such a feminist, I guess, but guys do it to themselves. Guys are always in the comments. I never see girls triggered in the comment section.
yeah.
Guys are overly sensitive. Maybe they have time for it. Maybe I don't know what it is. I don't know what that phenomenon is. But to say you see guys triggered in the comments, it's a very common thing. So
Yeah.
there's this corner on Instagram where content creators, they'll find the most random TikTok video of some girl being like toxic. Like some girls saying, my boyfriend apologized for forgetting my sandwich, but it's okay. Something I'm sleeping with his best friend anyway. Some dumb, very toxic thing, right?
Yeah.
And then they'll cut away to the creator of the video, and it would just show him looking off, like with 1,000-yard stare, like, you know, like what's wrong with women these days? And the comment section is full of women these days. It's like you could do the same thing with guys. You could find guys TikTok and just, but when you see this being pushed, or you see movie scenes spliced up and making it seem like a guy is raging against a woman, and then you see a bunch of comments like, "Oh, she's for the streets. She's for the streets. You know, she's or she's so and so, so and so." And there's so much content there, and guys are engaging with it. And like I said, a girl could just be having fun, doing something silly, and then it's like, "Oh, what can you cook though?"
Right.
But for a guy, it's never like, "What can you do your oil change though?" I've never seen a girl comment that to a guy. Hey, can you change the tire though? I've never seen that.
I have seen it because I've been looking for it. But it's definitely way not as common. Like, it's exactly what you're saying. Like, for sure, there is this. I mean, we can go there. Let's just go there, okay? It's kind of entitlement. Like, it's some entitlement stuff, right? Like, that's what I have to assume about these comments. Is like, that man obviously like feels entitled to make that call, like to make that judgment, right? It's like he, and to think that someone cares, right? Like somebody needed his opinion or something, like somebody like, you know, that putting his thoughts, his just full negative comments about whatever it is into the world was like productive, like a productive use of his time or anyone's time. That it just takes a level of entitlement. Uh, but I would also say probably mixed with low self-esteem. Like, again, I'll just point out, I've never seen one of these comments from a person who had like their profile picture as a face. like it's only ever like a cartoon or literally blank, like no picture. So I have to assume it's not coming from people who feel really great about themselves and feel powerful and feel like their lives are working out. It's really coming from people who have to hide. Like they're already hiding on the internet.
Yeah, that's what scares me, because to the other side of that coin, I see guys full profile picture. That I see, they're not hiding anymore. It's like before they would hide, like you said, and that's still common. They still hide those fake. It might even be a person that the person knows, and it's a fake raw picture. Raw, they have to hate on the person because they know them, and that's why they're so invested in trying to bring them down a peg or two. But I have a friend. She's an engineer. The comments, she'll just post something about representing for Latinas in engineering. Cool, that's awesome. But the comments, it'll be men with both families. Like you go to the profile picture and they're like, they look, obviously they're not happy, but you would assume they're happily married, but yet they're over here trying to bring this person down just for posting about their their success or their story or their passion, and they're trying to bring them out, and they're not hiding anymore. That's what's crazy to me, because I don't see that many hiding anymore. Because you do see obviously the hiding, but you see people that are, like you said, they're proud of it. Whatever it may be. Obviously, we're talking about quote unquote gender roles and these kind of things, but it could be with anything else. People are so happy to show that they don't have empathy.
Yeah.
It's a braggadocious thing.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry to hear that. That sucks. That's,
but she shakes it off. She continues.
I mean, she's obviously a badass because she's becoming an engineer.
Yeah.
But I mean, just still to have to experience that is just, and to know that how much like racism that stems from, right? And as you said, kind of this bravado in being just completely prejudiced is gross. It's gross, to be honest.
It goes back to the same things. It's like my coach, for example. It's always I have a plethora of example. This is the last one I'll give, and we'll give more to you. But so there was a girl just doing a TikTok in the kitchen, enjoying herself, and the comment section is full of, "Can you make tortillas? Though? Can you make tortillas? How about you go make tortillas instead of doing a TikTok dance?" How do you know she didn't just finish making the tortillas?
Right.
Like, and now she's enjoying herself. But it's no, the comment section is full of, "You're useless. Get a life. Why are you having fun? Get to work in the kitchen." That's the whole comment section. So to kind of circle this back to you being a dating coach, do you feel like with women, is it becoming harder to not settle for the wrong person? Like you have a client that's like desperate, how you once were. Do they ever say, "I don't know, maybe my standards are too high," and do you have to tell them, "No, your standards are not too high"? You have to tell them, like, relax, like, have that conversation?
All the time. Yeah, that's one of my top conversations, and some of my top content is also about that, like why to not settle. But that's also a trend that we're seeing in dating, is that women are now choosing to be single rather than settle for a relationship with a non-emotionally intelligent man, for example. Like a man who's not willing to look at himself.
That's what
Yeah. Yeah. So there are shifts happening, but I definitely do still get that question of like, am I expecting too much? Like, are my standards too high? And then my answer is always no. It's like it is the case that there are a lot of, man, the only word that comes to mind is idiots, but there's got to be a better word for that.
Because idiots does nullify their toxicity. Because to say it's idiot, it's almost like saying they don't know any better, but they do know better.
I mean, some of them probably don't, but plenty of them do, and so it's just
they're D-bags.
Let's just say that. Yeah, D-bags. There you go. And that's what makes online dating exhausting, honestly, is people go through online dating hoping that it's going to be, right, the princess prince situation. It's like, I'm going to be served my perfect person, like right here on this dating app. And unfortunately, a lot of dating is like sifting through D-bags, people who aren't actually ready to date, but they're on dating apps. People who are on there for fun rather than for actual connection. Like, there's a lot of work that that has to be kind of gone into so that you can really just keep your standards and your sanity at the same time. Um, yeah, it's a jungle out there. Like, yeah, it's definitely, you gotta look through the vines. Like, it's really not, it's not like, oh, I see you immediately, soulmate. Like, that's not what's happening.
Because also you have to love yourself and take care of yourself and make yourself presentable. Obviously, we like to say don't judge a book by its cover, but obviously that's the first thing to see, right?
Yeah.
Well, that's the first thing. And I read some studies that the average Tinder swipes, it was a crazy amount of time, but swipes,
Yeah.
a day, so many things. I think they even sell you like you run out of a number of swipes you can make. I think that's an upgrade. Like you said,
Yeah.
it's a monetary thing. It always more money.
Yeah.
So hey, you want to keep swiping? Like addicted to it? Okay, pay more, and people pay it.
Yeah.
But so what do you say to a client where it's like you said, you have to love yourself. You have to take care of yourself and make yourself presentable. Obviously, like how do you like kind of tiptoe around that to a client? Like obviously you're not gonna be like, look at you, you're unattractive. You're not gonna say that because obviously beauty is in the eye of the beholder. But like
Yeah.
how do you kind of approach that with a client who you feel like doesn't put the best effort in making itself presentable?
Yeah. So I teach this generally in terms of like habits because that's kind of a nice, easy entry point for people. Um, so I divided it into kind of like we can say mental health, physical health, financial health, social health, and we can say like recreational health. I forget what I call it, in fact, in the book I wrote. Um, but uh, you sort of pick like 2 or 3 things in each of those categories that you're gonna do for yourself. Because self-care and loving yourself is, like, actually a really random, broad category of things in the
Yeah.
world. So, what the goal of that is to begin actually demonstrating to yourself that you matter through the actions you take. So, in this case, right, like, some physical things you could do for yourself would be, like, make sure you drink enough water every day, right? Make sure you're walking at least half an hour every day. Like, you can just check your phone, like, make sure that you have that much activity per day. Things you could do financially are, like, open a savings account and just deposit even $20 per month or something, like, just very basic, like, being mindful that you take care of yourself financially. Maybe it means you buy yourself a new pair of clothes, like, a new something, like, new item of clothing or something that just really makes your day.
Like confidence.
Just like
Get your confidence.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, what do you need to do for yourself to, yeah, build your confidence and let yourself know that you've got you, right? Like, let yourself know that you're taking care of you. Um, and and it continues, right? It's like then there's mental health. Like, do you journal? Do you have a therapist? Like, what kinds of things do you do for you? And it goes on, right? So the first thing to do is just to start establishing those habits. Like, really got to write them down usually so you don't forget, because the brain loves to forget new habits. um, but just keep returning to it. Like, it is a practice, as what I call it, because it's something that you strive to do and you return to when you don't do very well at it. But it's something that you like get into, like training.
Make it a routine. You have
Yeah.
a routine. Yeah.
Exactly.
And
It becomes second nature.
yeah, writing it down is also something like testing it. So that's very good too.
Mhm. Yeah, so true. Yeah.
Because same thing with me with fitness plans and everything that I friends that don't work out with me. I almost memorize it, almost memo it, like, remember, you said you're gonna work out, you send it to them.
Yeah.
Hey, here's a screenshot. You said you were gonna go do it. And it's, I'll
Mhm.
go.
Yeah.
Because if you
Yeah.
just say, I'll meet you there, you're not gonna go. So
Right.
writing it down, creating little small habits, like I told one of my cousins recently. I told him just little habits here and there. Just get into it,
Mhm.
just get into a routine. You'll feel it, and once you see the benefits, same thing with your confidence.
Yeah.
I don't know your clients. I don't know if you have any kind of like task, like for example, like if I were dating, which obviously I don't have any experience with that, but I would imagine some kind of task, like, hey, when you go to the grocery store, start a conversation with a stranger. Or I'll pop
Yeah.
if you're heterotic like that.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
make someone smile today.
Yeah.
Have a single serve encounter, someone making smile.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'll help your confidence too.
Absolutely. That's a beautiful example. Yeah.
And you're doing your service for someone, making someone smile. That's awesome, man. Like that's something that I have a little sister, so it's my obligation as an older brother to nourish her energy, and she tells me I give off a lot of boomer energy. So
Mhm.
wherever we go, whether it be pharmacy or some kind of room to get coffee there, and I'm not dragging a conversation with every single worker, but
Mhm.
it was receptive that
Yeah.
they were engaging and they were it was a chummy old time, the
Yeah.
humor language. But
Yeah.
it was chummy. It was cool dialogue, and it was like, "Oh, I'll see you later. Good day." That was it.
Yeah.
It's something that as a man, I feel good when I can interact with opposite sex and then not ask for their number, not
Yeah.
make it be like, "Okay, here was my objective." I mean, if you read the vibes and if you feel like she wants to do it or she's hoping you ask for her number, that's cool. But it's also cool to have that interaction where it's like, oh, this is just a human interaction. I'm not trying to
Yeah.
um give you yourself like that. It's just a cool human interaction.
Yeah. That comes back to that kind of like manipulation technique conversation we were having in terms of like, oh yeah, you could just interact with someone. You don't have to like be trying to do something. Like you can just relate to people, connect with people, like have a good time without there being, yeah, like a need to turn it into like some kind of courtship or game or whatever.
And sometimes it's might it might
Yeah.
turn into something. And
Yeah.
you get that spark. You get the vibes going. But
Yeah.
speaking of manipulation, I want to talk about the word seduction because
Let's do it.
I read into it a bit. I've
Mhm.
somewhat familiar with that sounded so pretentious. I read into seduction, but I'm
Yeah.
familiar with the word, seduction, everything. But
Mhm.
on a surface level, seduction, people think of it as deceiving someone, tricking someone.
Yeah.
They think when they think seduction, they think one night stand. They don't think
Yeah.
long, happy marriage. So is that just stigma brought on from pop culture, you think, or is there some truth to that when it comes to seduction? Like, do you see seduction as a technique for like one night stand hookup culture, or is that something that could lead to long term relationship?
Yeah, I actually see it as both. So this is a fun, nuanced answer. My book is called The Art of Feminine Seduction. So I think about seduction a lot.
Okay.
um, and the truth is that the etymology of the word, so the origin of the word, does have negative connotations. Like originally the word meant for a man to lead a woman astray, right? So for a man to lead a married, right, acclaimed woman uh to stray from her husband, who was of course at that time, because it's Roman, her owner,
Yeah.
essentially,
Okay.
right? Like so the origins of that word, like historically, are definitely pretty negative and they're pretty sexist too. All in one go. Um, and then over time that word has kind of taken on more and more meaning in terms of like now women can seduce too, right? And then it's also about like, oh, a woman led him astray, like then he did something
But then
like
that's
that was
also sexist because the whole Adam and Eve thing.
yeah.
Eve,
Oh yeah.
tricked him.
Yeah.
The girl tempted him, right? Isn't that
Yeah.
also a form of sexism? Like blaming it on the
Totally.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. That's where I took it, is that we have this shadow now of seduction and women pay the price. Because we are so afraid to express ourselves as powerfully and sexual at the same time, because you're not gonna be a nice girl when you do it. right? If you're being sexual as a woman, you're either being a slut or, there's like, or like even a whore, right? Like you maybe even went that far, right? It's like you maybe even have gone so deep into your sexuality that you're just,
Yeah.
you know, um, it's what were you saying, for the streets, right? It's
Yeah,
like,
I was about to say that's the current and I feel like it's kind of dangerous because it doesn't sound as offensive, but obviously it's still denigrating.
yeah,
She's for the
absolutely.
street, she
Yeah,
same thing as using the other words, but it sounds
yeah,
it's something that it's kind of watered down that you feel like it's not as severe, but it is. I just think it's
yeah.
but yeah, for
Yeah.
the streets, yeah.
The implication is still you're a bad girl, right?
Yep.
And being a bad girl is undesirable.
Mhm.
And so a lot of women right now, especially our generation and older, and I think it's still happening in Gen Z and probably Gen Alpha is going to have some too. But it's called the Madonna whore complex. So
Mm.
it's like you can either be a Madonna, right, who's a virgin, like literally, she's a mother, but she's also a virgin. So first of all, that's literally impossible for any woman to achieve. So we've got the Madonna on this side, impossible perfection. And then we have the whore, who's just, the absolute, she's
The other Madonna.
right.
Thank
Right.
yeah.
She's theoretically the other Madonna.
Yeah.
She's the Magdalene. Um, and so as a woman, you can get really easily like stuck in between these two archetypes. We can say like these two ways of being that are not really who you are, but you can be both and either at different times. And I believe that looking at our relationship to seduction and the word seduction and how we relate to our own seductiveness can really unlock a lot of our power to attract, like in manifestation, even like power to attract good things into our lives, but definitely in relationships, like ability to show up as competent and romantically attractive, right? Like just ready for a romantic relationship, like ready to have an amazing sexual relationship with someone. Um, at least for me, that was a big part of my journey because I definitely, like early in life, I definitely was very prudish, we would say, right? I was like one of those prude people. Um, but mainly because I was terrified, like not actually because I felt powerful and like I don't want this, kind of relationship with men. It was because I was just like afraid. And then getting into hookup culture, like in college and all of that, just was more disempowerment, right? Was just more of like not getting what I wanted, doing things sexually to make someone else happy, but not because it was great for me or like made me happy. Um, and just like so many again layers of like unhappiness and making choices from sexual choices or choices about my sexuality, even not necessarily sleeping with people, but just like how I presented myself and how I, took up space in the world even, was really affected by my ability to like perceive myself as attractive and desirable and worthwhile, right? Like, because that's what it comes down to is like, how worthwhile am I? Um, how much space do I deserve to take up? Like, that that stuff is all, in my opinion, bound up in our ability to feel attractive. And a big part of that is our sexual power, and a big part of that is our power to seduce. So when I say seduction, when I talk about feminine seduction, for example, I'm talking about dealing with the what we can call the shadow of seduction, which is all the unconscious stuff. It's like all the stuff that we believe and feel and assume about seduction and being seduced or seducing someone else without really like doing it on purpose, right? It's like it's just how we're behaving sort of on automatic pilot. Like what do I believe, men want from me, or what do I believe I deserve from men? That kind of unconscious thinking around like getting what you want in love, like really like being able to be like, this man wants me, and then just like going for it. That was like all in the space of seduction for me. So that's what I'm teaching people to do, is like how to move through that kind of disempowered, I make choices for other people place, and into like full on like I am seductive. And then I use it how I want to, right? Like, I'm personally not trying to date anyone's husband.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's for me, that's not a thing. But you know, I found my own husband. It's like, but I felt powerful enough to just like really do the dating game, get on apps, go do first dates, and find my person. Like that required another level of power that I didn't have access to as a young person. Um, and so the teaching of seduction for me is about that, but it definitely does still have negative connotations. It has a negative history. Like there are plenty of people teaching seductive techniques, which again fall more into that kind of pickup artist
Yeah.
category, like for sure. um, you know, I actually wrote my book, The Art of Feminine Seduction, in a way as a response to that very famous Robert Greene book, The Art of Seduction.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I'm familiar with it.
because yeah, I found it kind of offensive.
Well,
um, go for it.
sorry, continue.
No, go for it. I can.
No, I feel like, to your point, it's offensive because it feels like, because I didn't read it, but I read audiobook snippet, and it seems very obtuse to a lot of realities.
Yeah,
Like,
for sure.
I enjoyed his work as far as the 48 Laws of Power. That was interesting
Mhm.
also because it had a lot of historical anecdotes, and I'm a history
Yeah.
nerd, so that's on my hand. And I want to try this one out to see. Okay, that one's pretty good, but this one
Mhm.
felt really. Obviously, the guy is happily married, but it felt like someone never actually been in the trenches.
Yeah.
That's what it felt like, and I feel like the what a lot of guys lack from is the ability to read the vibes, right? To read, because they're always so upset over consent. Oh, but
Yeah.
she never said, oh, did she want it? She went to the hotel
Yeah.
room with the guy. Like, yeah, a girl could go to a hotel room with a guy and be vibing, and then he could say one thing that makes her change her mind, and she can leave.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that.
That's
You know,
wild.
that's what it is, and people cannot understand that. The
Yeah.
vibes. It,
Yeah.
I don't know, but that's what that audiobook rather. That's how it sounded to me. Someone who's
Yeah.
never actually been in the trenches and is trying to. I mean, to me, they knocked it out of the park with a lot of power. Maybe I'm biased because
Mhm.
historical examples, like I said, but
Yeah.
it felt like someone that kind of how can I say it? Someone who believes their own hype a little too much, and
Mhm.
I don't know. It just wasn't for me.
Yeah. Agreed. I hadn't thought about it that way, but that's a really interesting way to put that. That yeah, absolutely. Like not super applicable, I guess. Yeah, it was. It was like this dude hasn't actually done this, like
It was very,
like you're saying. Like
it's like the dandy, the female dandy. I mean, yeah, things were interesting. Some things kind of made sense, but it was basic, simple things. It was simple things that you could pick up from anything from Google.
yeah. Right.
Some people, if you are overly attentive, they'll get bored. It's not
Yeah.
true. And some people,
Yeah.
if you're not attentive enough, it also depends on the person's upbringing.
Totally.
So it's not one glove fits all. That's what I felt that
Yeah.
that was trying to. That's why I didn't like that.
Yeah. I agree. And definitely what I got from it was like, oh, you should change, right? Like you should change yourself to be more seductive, right? Like you should pick up these habits and like do these habits in order to become attractive, or like a Casanova, because Casanova was all over that book. And
Yeah, the Casanova.
I don't know about this.
No, it's
Yeah.
something that what I was gonna ask you, do you feel like with women being seductive, is it more about trying to set the guy up to make the first move, or is it about telling girls to go ahead and make the first
So the dating research shows that women usually make the first move, in effective romantic like couplings, but the first move that they make is subtle. Like women's first move is usually a smile or like an invitation to come talk to me, right? Like there's some kind of prolonged eye contact or you know, some word said in passing or something where a woman indicates, this is again, most of the studies are on heterosexual couples so far. Like we're still catching up with with like intersex and intergender relationships. But so basically this is what women do generally, and then the men come over, right? Or the men start a conversation, or the men, you know, buy a drink or whatever. And that is generally the modern courtship like flow, essentially, is like there's an indication of interest from the woman, and then the man follows up if he wants to. And I found that incredibly useful. Like for me, that was very effective. Part of it probably had to do with building my confidence then, that like if I indicated interest in a man, there was like, it's like already a conversation, right? Like I indicate interest and then he comes over, right? Or I indicate interest and then he texts me something really nice, you know, like it created a
How
immediate
would you do that? Like smiling, making eye contact, or remembering something that they mentioned?
Yeah, totally. And flirting in online dating apps. So my method is that you flirt immediately, because people are like, the first thing you say to anyone, and this again works for men, women, non-binary, whoever. First contact on a dating app is a flirtation, because these people are getting a million likes. They're getting, you know, like no effort from these likes. They're getting very little attention, or they're getting these conversations that are like, hi, how are you? Go nowhere. These conversations go absolutely nowhere. So your first, you know, your first order of action is to put energy into the conversation, put energy into the connection. And that means you want to flirt. You want to let that person know why you're there, like why you swiped on them, why you're messaging them. And it can be really simple. Like it could be totally like, I would even just say hello with a winky face, right? Instead of trying to like you know, figure out what I say to be the most interesting woman they've ever heard. You know, it's like, don't do that. Just like something really simple, winky face. Other great flirtations are direct compliments. Like tell them why you like their profile. Like what was it about their profile that made you swipe right or message them? Um, just literally like, you have the most beautiful green eyes I've ever seen. Whatever it is, like it doesn't, you know, it literally doesn't matter. Just something about like, this is what caught my eye about your profile. And then from there, it moves on. But essentially, you want to immediately distinguish yourself as like someone who's interesting, right? Like because there's just an oversaturation, right? Like there's just so many people on online dating apps.
Yes, there's so many. How are you? What's up?
Yeah. Hey.
What's going on?
Yeah. It's
like, what's up?
Yeah. Yeah. It's a person you've never met, you know, like this is the thing, is that it's a completely different world than we're used to. And you're literally meeting a stranger online who's looking for connection. So you just got to step up your connection game a little bit more. Like,
Yeah, and then we over-examine every text. We have time to think about it. We have time to reply to it. It's not like a human interaction where it's like, hey, how's it going? And then quickly start flirting.
Immediate flow. Yeah.
Because obviously, also in person, you wouldn't just come up and be like, you have beautiful green eyes. Like in person,
Yeah.
you would be like,
Yeah.
nice to meet you, so and so. And then in the beginning, the flirting process.
Yeah.
So,
Exactly.
so for women, do you feel like, because overseas, I don't know if you experience this, there's certain areas where women are a bit more proactive because men tend to be not as proactive as the women over there. Over here, the man is like you said, that the woman does subtle things, eye contact, smile, touching the shoulder, any touching the arm, something like that. but then again, the guy has to read it well too, because I've also had friends who the cashier says, smiles and hasn't, and says, "Have a nice day," and they're like,
Yeah.
"God, I think she wants it."
He wants me.
Yeah, she's like, "No, that's her job."
It's her job. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, in human interaction at every level, right? Like I'm married. I still miscommunicate with my husband.
Mm.
Like
Mhm.
there are still misunderstandings. Like that is in a way like part of human interaction when we, make these assumptions about what the other person means. Um and so, there's definitely potential for like a little bit of embarrassment, let's say, or just awkwardness
Yeah.
in general.
Wow.
But yeah,
But sometimes also addressing awkwardness, that's also a good way to kind of, hey, this is
yeah,
awkward.
just all see it.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good way to kind of power through it, I think.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Mm.
And oh god, there's so much that can be said about that. Shoot.
Really? Well, do tell.
Well, I was just your first comment reminded me of like your first comment was about learning online versus in person, right? Like
Mhm.
online, yeah, you can say like you have nice eyes. In person, you're not going to start that way.
Mhm.
So essentially, in person, what you want to do to engage someone to like check them for this interest, you want to engage them about something that you're doing communally. So you're going to draw them into like whatever the situation is. Like if you're out at a concert, you say like something about the band, right? You mention something about the common experience you're having. Um, I can't think of a good line for a checkout person right now. So, I'm sorry about that. Usually, I'm pretty good at thinking of, like, good flirtations, but for whatever reason, that's not coming to mind right now. But you wanna say something like, the theory is that you would wanna say something that connects the 2 of you, like, the experience that you're having in general. So, you'd wanna say something about the store, for example. Like, you wanna just, like, kind of fuel the conversation, and then the checkout person would need to either like show interest in you, like really reciprocate your attention, or they would make it kind of obvious that they're like gonna check out the next person in line, you know? And so that would let you know quickly, or at least more definitely, if like this person actually feels interested in you, or this person's interacting with you as a customer.
Yeah, maybe they're just being kind. And that's why I feel the barometer for a lot of people is kind of broken, because
Yeah.
sometimes they over sometimes they don't give themselves enough credit. Sometimes they
Yeah.
think the girl's just being, they put their own selves down, right?
Yeah. It works
Walk away
both
from a
ways.
situation, from a potential that could have went
Yeah.
from, like think about the checkout girl. You could walk up to them and be like, "Hey, how I don't know, there's a song on it, right? How many times does a song
Yeah.
play a day, right? Because there's always the same songs. They could be, oh God, it's dreadful. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
something similar.
Exactly. Perfect example. Yeah.
It's just something
Yeah.
that gives them the spotlight and lets them rant about something that it's not very deep. It's not like traumatizing, but it's still something they can vent. Something like, oh, like,
Yeah.
or if there's no cashiers working or so and so, like, I guess all these registers are for decoration.
Yeah.
And they can vent like, yeah, let me tell you.
Yeah.
Something that puts the onus on them, the attention on them. Because if you're just like, hey, what's up? Working.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
not-
Exactly. I don't know. What do you want me to say? Like,
yeah.
yeah.
And also, you want to avoid yes or no question.
Yes, that's another great one. So that is the next thing I teach is that so you start with a flirtation like that, and then you immediately move into what I call emotional questions, which are basically as you just exactly landed on. It's like not a yes or no question. So it's an open-ended question. And then it gets to who that person is. So it's really putting the attention on that person and getting into like more of the emotions of their life. So it's like, oh, do they feel like disgusted by their situation right now? Or do they maybe they love that song that they heard, like maybe that's their favorite whatever, like that's their jam. And you will just by asking those kinds of questions, like, you just find out so much more about who that person is, and you have more fun. Like, both of you have more fun rather than the kind of questions people often ask, like, "How are you? Where's your hometown? Like, where did you grow up?" Like, those kind of dead end one-word answer questions are death in dating chats because you don't know very much about that person yet, and they've already told that information to, like, so many people in their lives that there's gonna be nothing about you that stands out. Like, no. You will not stand out with that kind of question and information exchange. Like, how many siblings do you have? Like, that does not matter. What you need is you need to know who that person is. Like, you need to know their core. And the questions that you just mentioned are the thing that's gonna get you there, right? It's like, not yes or no. Don't ask yes or no questions. Like, don't do that. Open-ended and something that really puts the attention on that person is going to go so much further for anyone. Again, this is where that's the theory, like, for men, women, whatever, is like, doesn't matter.
The
It's just
rest
people.
lies on you, right? This is
Yeah.
things that kind of like,
Yeah.
it's all the little jump start. That's all it is. 'Cause
Yeah.
all these things could happen, and then the girl could change her mind, or the guy could change her mind, and that's fine. Cool. You know,
Yeah.
it's
Or someone's already like, has a partner. Like, it's like,
yeah,
you don't know. You don't know someone's situation. But you're just testing. Like, you're just testing for compatibility and connection and, like, whether you can even enjoy this person, because that's not a given. Even if you've matched on a dating app, like, you know, I matched with plenty of people who are just not a good match. Like, you don't get very much information from a profile. So,
yeah, because the match is just superficial, right? It's just a profile, like a picture.
yeah, it's like these are the pictures, maybe some prompts, a little bit of information about their life, like politics and whether they smoke or, like, stuff just very, very surface level, exactly, as you said, superficial for sure.
Yeah, and then that's gonna determine, and you go from there. Do you feel like politics, obviously, they've been brewing like crazy in this country the past whatever. Is that something that, like, I would imagine your clients, is that something they deal with? Politics?
Yeah, I mean, luckily, this year seems to be a little less fraught. Like, thank goodness.
Mhm.
Um, but definitely, during the Trump years, I'm just gonna call it, during the freaking Trump years, and especially at the beginning of the pandemic, like, that was a big issue because it was and I had people on, like, the vaccination situation, like, both ends of the spectrum of, like, I need to date someone who is vaccinated, or, like, I need to date someone who isn't vaccinated. Like, it was just, like, people were really.
Wait, so they were going out of the way, like, were they approaching it more like, were they kinda being like, "Okay, this person has to be vaxxed," or were they kind of like, "Okay, this person's cool, but then I figured out they weren't vaxxed." Was it
I had both. I had both. Yeah, so there was people, like, wondering how to put their profile, like, in a classy way, like, "You need these politics," basically, or, like, "You gotta be vaxxed," or, like, uh, "Please don't be vaxxed." Like, just, like, both both ways of just. Yeah, there was definitely an upping of intensity in terms of, like, "You need these kind of politics to date me." Like, whereas it seemed like before that wasn't like, that's sort of been an important part of compatibility-ish, but.
but it was always in the background. I
Right.
mean, I wasn't actively on the market or dating profiles, but I feel like it was in
Mhm.
the background.
Right, exactly. It was like, okay, well, that's how you vote, but that's not necessarily, like, everything about you. Like, that's not, like, the first milestone you need to cross in order to date me. Um, and it does feel like since 2020 that it's, like, moved up in people's like, on people's lists of deal breakers, essentially, and, yeah, I mean, oh god, ugh,
Would
I
you say
should
that's healthy?
will make me really
Is
depressed. Mm,
it
yes and
kinda
no.
healthy to be, like, transparent with it? Like, "Yeah, let's not waste our time, because if you're a Trump guy, it's not gonna work. If you're not a Trump guy, it's not gonna work."
Yeah, I mean, so yes and no for sure, because on that hand, on that, like, to that point of view or whatever is, like, you have your boundaries, you have your standards, like, and I'll just talk my personal politics. I feel like people who support Trump are just willing enough to allow so much racism, sexism, violence toward people, um, that I personally have a hard time imagining that being a good life partner for me. Um,
Well, it says something when it's not a deal breaker.
right. But
Yeah.
so here's maybe the other side of that is like, but what about like a world in which we all live, which is what I believe in, right? Like, okay, so I believe in a world in which there's space for everyone. And so by me saying like, well, I just absolutely cannot get along with someone who has this, you know, political whatever belief, I kind of discounted an entire person based on one fact, right? Which I have talked to people who support Trump who don't believe that they are prejudiced or acting out, you know, uh, uh, supporting, we could say, like
Mhm.
a racist, sexist agenda um, by their vote, and so kind of this like black and white thinking in terms of like it's like this or it's like that, and therefore like since you this, you must believe that or something like that. I hope this is making sense.
Well, it like I said, it can be healthy and also because it's funny because you said the Trump years, but Trump was the catalyst. He was a catalyst
Yeah.
of this chaos because when I met my last partner, Trump had actually barely got elected. I think it was 2017, and we talked and we connected on crazy story. We connected via like it wasn't a dating app. It was actually like a word puzzle app, and it wasn't even a dating agenda. It was just playing like words for friends, like crossword, whatever. But one of the first things she asked me after getting to know each other a little bit was, "Who did you vote for?" Like in a jokey way, in a jokey way.
Yeah.
And I was like, "Well, not Trump." And she's like, "Right answer." But at that
Yeah.
point, she already knew my vibe. She
Yeah.
obviously knew I was in a Trump vibe because the things we
Right.
talked about, my beliefs, the way I carried
Yeah.
myself, it was more of a kind of a joke. But
Yeah.
to me, it was appropriate.
Yeah.
And up until it went wrong, that was the first thing. It's okay. This
Right.
is a reasonable question to ask. Obviously, it was a good fun because we were already
Yeah.
vibing, we were already
Yeah.
connecting, and
Yeah.
I didn't feel offended by it.
Yeah.
Yeah, obviously, it's not.
Yeah.
Know
Yeah.
enough to know I didn't.
Yeah.
I almost want to say, "Look at me,"
Right.
you know. But that's not safe to say either because there's plenty of people
I
looking
mean,
at me.
yeah.
But that should be a giveaway. My last name and look at me.
Yeah.
Obviously, it isn't. But that's something that. And then COVID happened, and that was
Right.
a whole other thing.
Yep.
Because I've had friends, family members who didn't want to get vaccinated, but there's a
Yeah.
difference between being like not for me and being anti-vax. It's a
Right.
huge difference.
Yes.
And that's what
Yeah.
we saw. We saw
Yeah.
a braggadocious nature from the Trump supporters that was I'm anti-vax. It
Yeah.
wasn't just it's not for me.
Yeah.
I'm anti it. I'm acting
Yeah. Like you
against
can't
it.
do that.
And
Yeah.
that's to me that was insane to me because
Yeah.
for traveling reasons then I didn't to get into my politics it was whatever I got vaccinated.
Yeah.
Whatever. Also traveling reasons, but other than that, I still got it anyways. But I wasn't over there trying to tell people to get it either.
Right.
Maybe I should. Someone's going to disagree and be like, "You should. You should have been so pro-vax and bashing people." Right? It's never
Yeah.
enough for either side. But
Yeah.
to see that the anti-vax, that was crazy. And
Yeah.
to say something is crazy after 2016, it just still went up and
Yeah.
up and up.
I know.
That's
It's wild.
crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it seemed like there was an amping up of polarizing opinions. I feel like that's what we're getting at. It was just like everything was like anti-vax or pro-vax. It's like boom, or like Trump versus no Trump was just like woo, and I mean right-wing politics just woof. So it seems like it has become something different. I mean, I don't know. Again, so we're headed into this crazy year. So
yeah, it's I forgot. Yeah, it's 2021.
yeah, yeah. Like okay, well, I don't know what to tell you right now. um, ask me in like 6-7 months. But yeah, we'll see. We will see. Where it's going to be an interesting year. So yeah.
But do you see like for some clients because going into that whole conservative liberal
Mhm.
thing, I see with a lot of people my age, like guys, they feel like feminism has destroyed. Um, I don't know how you would phrase this, but it's destroyed the courting process because
Mhm.
it's so independent. So and so, like, you can't get strippers. Like feminism killed strippers. That's the famous that you see on social media.
Yeah.
To me, see, I disagree with that. I've always said that maybe it's because being raised by a strong woman. You know, my grandma was a very strong woman.
Mhm.
Um, to me, that was always a great thing to have a strong woman
Yeah.
in my life. I never wanted a woman who was submissive, if you will. To me,
Yeah.
like I've had partners that were, I would rant about things. Maybe they weren't as interested, but they wouldn't give me any
Mhm.
pushback. They wouldn't give me their opinions about whatever it may be. And
Yeah.
to me, that was never flattering. That was never
Mhm.
complimentary. It was always like,
Yeah.
you have pushback. Give it. I like that. I
Yeah.
appreciate it. You know, that's always
Yeah.
value that. You feel like that's an active thing you see. You see like women who are have to deal with, you know, the duality of being, you know, I want my moments of being a damsel in distress and my moments of being.
Yeah. I mean, that was for me part of my healing because I became what like in therapeutic terms is referred to as like hyper independent.
Mhm.
So for me there was some retraining in terms of like it's okay for other people to help you. You know, like that's allowed. It doesn't mean you're weak. It doesn't mean you're, you know, incapable. Um like I personally did have to heal some of that like I don't need a man kind of attitude, right? Like it because for me in that case it wasn't like an empowered like I'm just a powerful woman who like makes my own life happen. It was much more of a like defensive like no, I don't need you. Um and so I did need to heal some of that kind of attitude about it. But I definitely and I help other women do that too, right? Like allow a man to open a door for you because it's nice. It's just nice. It doesn't actually mean anything. Unfortunately, like this is the thing is that because of the way relationships were structured with that whole like dominant submissive thing is like if you accept help or you accept support then you owe something, right? It's we created this kind of like transactional relationship where it's like I do the telling and you do the submitting, right? Or I do the breadwinning, I earn the money so you take care of all the non-money stuff in our lives. Like we set up this kind of like rules, right? Like all these rules for like how to be with someone, um, specifically men and women in this case. And it it's not super healthy in the way that I see it, right? It like really depends on somebody shutting down some part of themselves, um, or both of them shutting down some part of themselves, right? Because then in this case, then it doesn't let men be their full emotional selves, or it doesn't let men you know, fall apart sometimes. Like just freaking sometimes a man needs to fall apart. I'm sorry.
Yeah, sometimes the man has to
Um,
be the little spoon, right?
yeah, exactly. The man is the damsel in distress. Um, so there's kind of a balancing that for me needed to happen in terms of like allowing myself to like we can say consciously be in distress, like be the damsel in distress, so that I wasn't just like acting it out in really unhealthy ways and like um, you know, like needing a savior because what's not sexy is the like needing a savior energy. But what is sexy is like allowing a man to open a door for you, or like allowing him to pay for dinner because he can and he wants to, or like, just I don't know, just letting him fix your car, just like just very basic stuff. Like I just started letting men do things for me, right? Like now I'm thinking back to like the Jiffy Lube guys, like because I would pull up at my car and be like, I don't freaking know. I don't know, guys. Like, I'm sorry. And they would just like put on new windshields for me, windshield wipers, because they could, and it was really easy for them. Um and they didn't charge me for it, so it's like I just finally like allowed men to do nice things for me. Um and that was actually really incredibly powerful. uh for me, with my background in terms of being like, no, absolutely not. I don't need anything. I'm great by myself. Uh but you don't want to get into that losing yourself thing that we talked about at the beginning, right? Where you're just like, I just do what someone else says, or, he rants to me and then I'm just like, whatever, dude. Like, you don't want to be like so withdrawn and submissive, we can say, but there's got to be a different word for that too. Just kind of like withdrawn from the situation, that you don't have like a thought or a feeling or, connection to offer the person, right? Like your male partner, maybe, sure. um, yeah, like you don't want it to be just, oh, your job is to do this or my job is to do that.
It's
Like
about balance.
it's more complicated. Yeah,
Not about balance.
absolutely.
Road trip, for example. Like, yeah, there's a time and place to be passenger princess, I think they can call it.
Yeah. Yep.
Where they're just like, and let the guy take care of it. That's cool. But the way I see with culture now, guys talk about gender. The people who talk so much about gender roles, they want so much cookies for doing gender stuff.
Right.
Guy,
Yeah.
it's their own ideology. That the guy does so and so, the guy changing the tire if the car breaks down.
Yeah.
But they want
Yeah.
extra bonus points for doing the basics.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
what I see. I see this
Yeah.
thing, this culture of like being so, what's the word we're starting? Forget the word. But
Polarizing, maybe.
no, like where they feel they're owed, like they're owed something.
Oh yeah. Transactional.
No, like
Oh, entitled.
entitled.
That was
Entitled. There you go.
Yeah.
They're so entitled to all these things, right? Just because they think
Yeah.
things that in their own words, it's a gender role.
Yeah.
There's a strange noise. Yeah, the guy has to go investigate.
Yeah.
It is. I want to go
Yeah.
investigate. I'll,
Yeah.
tell my partner, hey, call the cops if you want, but I'll be the one
Yeah.
to investigate, whatever.
Yeah.
And that's just what happens.
Yeah.
And I feel like guys, they want brownie points for doing these same things that they preach that are basic things to do.
Yeah. Yeah. I actually really like your distinction there. And I think that's a perfect measure for whether it's sort of like appropriate for you. I don't know how to, I'll figure out how to say that in a second in a better way. But like, if you expect to get something for how you're being, that's a sign that you're not in balance, right? Like your natural, authentic way of being will point you in the direction of like your natural authentic expression. So if you want to be the one who goes to check out the strange noise because you feel protective, because you literally have this urge to make the room safe, make the house safe, amazing, perfect, that's great. But it shouldn't come from it's my role to do, and therefore doing this role is what gets me respect, or a blowjob, or like whatever it is. It's just like it's not about a point system. Like it's not about like the other way. The woman made dinner, so now she gets to like have a haircut. She gets money because she's the homemaker. Like it's kind of ridiculous to think that way. So I like your system of like, if there are brownie points happening, like, yeah, for me, that's a sign that like that's not an authentic expression of your, we can say sexual energy, right? Like it's just not.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
and that's the way to get to get through the knuckleheads, because you mentioned that, and you're triggering your alpha males, right? Like I
Yeah.
get into some arguments on Instagram, and I get called a soy boy so much because I think I'm pretty rational. I can't mention what to talk about. Like I was defending as being a soy boy, and then they go to my profile and they don't see a soy boy. They see someone that I look physically important. I work whatever. I have characteristics of a quote unquote alpha male. I just don't have. I feel like I need to have it my entire. But
Yeah.
so I've always see it. They go to my profile and they try to find anything they can to insult me. Like
Yeah.
they assume I'm a soy whatever
Mhm.
beta male, but it's
Yeah.
the culture of alpha male and this whole anti-gay
Yeah.
culture of
Yeah.
just for the streets, all that culture. It's all that stuff wrapped up into one, and that's why, like, with your clients, like I said earlier, just have to stress to them, don't settle. Don't settle.
Yeah.
Just
Yep.
work on yourself. When our
Trust that better is coming.
preparation, it's gonna be
Yes. That's a perfect way to say that. When preparation and opportunity meet.
yeah. I'm an expert. I'm an expert who's single, so I'm like the critic who knows the direction but can't drive to get there.
Yeah.
So
Well, you're preparing for when the opportunity strikes.
there you go. That's the mantra. That's the mantra.
Yeah.
No, but it's something that, like I said earlier, when I first saw your profile, I was like, this is gonna be fun. This is gonna be a fun discussion as far as like the way these things can go. And one more story I'm gonna share. I shared, I think, in the last podcast. It's such a ridiculous story to me. But I had a partner when I was 17, ages ago. But we 17. So
Yeah.
I had a partner, and I was on the phone with her, and she was like, "Well, I'll be right back." And she left for like 10 minutes, and she came back. And I'm like, "Is everything okay?" And she's like, "Yeah, I just had to go serve her dad." And she was Mexican American, and apparently the dad was sitting at the table, and the food was in the pot, but he cannot serve himself. But he was at the table, waiting to be served, and if no one serves him, he becomes a man child. And multiple and gripes about it, that someone has to serve it. The food is already cooked, mind you.
Yeah.
It's already cooked,
Right.
just in pot. Maybe he doesn't. Yes, that's all you got to do. But he would not do it, and she knew that if she didn't go do it, he'd become a man child.
Yeah.
He'll go full man child and just bitch and moan about it for the rest of the week or whatever. And
Yeah.
my mom. And
Yeah.
my parents are pretty old fashioned too. But to that extent, I never thought that was a whole other level to me.
Yeah.
My culture, but obviously my culture, it's a very sexist culture. It's very macho culture, right?
Yeah.
To that extent, that really blew my mind. And looking back at it, all that blew my mind.
Yeah.
I'm happy and proud that it stayed with me for 16 years later. It's still fresh in my mind.
Yeah.
That was an example of like, no, don't want that.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's really interesting to me.
Yeah. I think that's another one of those things that sort of like this is a strange generation, but unfortunately will probably not be gone immediately.
Yeah, I feel like, I mean, I feel like it's been a lot of doom and gloom for conversation, but I think the fact that you're having this kind of conversation, it does show that it is kind of changing. So, I mean, I do see it also with my peers, with my generation. I do see a lot of people changing. I see it with friends who have been also Mexican American, doing the dishes.
Yeah.
Whoever gets home first is when it does it. It's not like, oh, I'm gonna get home and watch TV until the wife gets home. She has to do that after working too. Also, we see that now. We see also because of economics, most houses are both people working. So obviously, whoever gets home first is gonna cook or bake the children, do all these things that back in the day.
Yeah.
So I do see a change in that.
Yeah. It's happening. It's happening. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it also depends on who you see. Obviously, if you're trying to like line, so the kind of person you are is what you try.
Totally. And there's so many different ways of being these days that exactly as you're saying, like you could like totally surround yourself and be attracting this whole community of like people who, yeah, kind of live like it's the same way as like 70 years ago. Um, but you can also find new ways of being and communities where they're just like, oh yeah, no, like gender roles, we don't do that here. So
Like it's cool. It's cool for like if you have a partner. I would imagine from my perspective, of heterosexual, it'd be cool to have a girlfriend who likes dogging herself up. That's cool.
mhm,
Awesome.
yeah,
At the same time,
yeah,
it's like I hold down to the stress. That's not really also stuff I see. Like if it's not me. So at the
yeah,
same time, she's strong, independent, and handle her stuff. Like I think the best way to put it, like you said, you didn't need it, but it's nice. It's still
yeah,
it's compliment. And
yeah,
that's probably something you have to balance out because before you were like, I don't need a man, but now
yeah,
it's uber nice to have, you know,
yeah,
husband.
yeah, yeah. And and the difference now, like I just appreciate the ways that we're different and like what he brings to my life that like I could never bring that to my life. So there's kind of this thing like, yeah, I don't need a man to survive, right? Like I don't need a man to like be okay. But I do need him. Like I really do uh, to just like to build my life the way I want it because I do want to have children sometime. It's like I don't want to do that alone. So like I need him. Like I need him in that case. And there was just this whole reframe in terms of like what does it mean to need or to uh yeah, to like be in partnership and like accept support and um communicate in ways that are healthy and appreciative instead of like, what have you not done for me lately, right? Like
Yeah.
it's kind of like negative, like not appreciating who this person is, uh, ways of being. So, it's just like retraining slightly in terms of like how you see what other people can do for you and how much you love it, like how much you appreciate it. It's just like I just freaking love the things my husband does. I love who he is. Like I would just never think of responding to the world the way he does, and I just think that's awesome. Like that's great. That's good stuff. And to get to be in partnership and like witness that every day and experience life as his partner is that's the gold, in my opinion. Like that's the gold right there of having a healthy relationship. So
You feel that kind of drives your passion. Obviously,
sure.
that's a relationship, but also
Yeah,
that's that's the nugget that gives you that extra and help someone to find their person.
for sure. I want that for everyone. Like I want that kind of depth of love and appreciation and admiration and respect and fulfillment even comes to mind. Like that's possible in relationships. Like for as many people as possible, because that definitely is not the story of relationships that I witnessed growing up or that I feel like we get told often. Like, we're often being told about lots of toxic stuff and lots of, um, divorces. We can just say, like, the end of family, like, just lots of really chaotic, hard stuff. And that definitely has its place too. Like, it's not to say that that's bad, but just for people to know that there's an alternative, right? Like, there is there is this amazing relationship possible, and I believe for everyone because I was a huge relationship mess. Like, obviously, like, I was not doing good in relationships. Like, I was not it's not good for a long time. So I really believe that, like, having these incredible relationships is possible for most people, right? It's not across the board, but, like, most people are totally capable of building the skills to have really incredible, fulfilling relationships, and it jazzes me up. Like, I want that. I want that for the world. So,
Mm.
yeah.
As a dating coach, do you like with your clients if they find someone, keep up with it, or is it like do you keep in touch, or is it just like you gotta just kind of
I try to. It
Try to
feels
keep in touch.
like a little awkward, like I'm like snooping back on their relationship, like to
Yeah.
figure out if they're still doing well or whatever. Um, but you know, for the most part, again, like just revisiting, like, hey, how are you? And how are things going? Like, I just because that is in the end what's important is like that the individuals are doing great. And then usually they will report to me like, here's how, here's how my love life is going.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, I haven't quite passed that place where I'm just like, oh yeah, I can just be like, hey, how's your love life? Out of the blue. I might get there someday, but yeah,
That's awesome.
yeah.
Well, I think we did. I took enough of your time right there. We're
I
almost at
think we
2
did
hours
it.
right there. Yeah, we
Yeah,
did it for this time. Definitely
yeah.
very fun. We could be a repeating guest. We'll see.
I would love that. I would love this. This has been a great
Things in order
conversation.
and just come up with some more interesting topics because I feel the chemistry there definitely
Yeah,
rampant. But
yeah.
thank you for your time, and we're gonna call it there at an hour 46.
Oh my gosh,
Definitely
dang.
for 45 minutes.
It does not feel like
Hour.
that. So I just do want to say that.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah,
But we'll sign off and we'll leave it there. And thank you for your time.
absolutely. Thank you so much for noticing.